Welcome to H2K Infosys. H2K Infosys is a e-verify business based in Atlanta, Georgia, United States. We provide 100% job-oriented, instructor-led, face-to-face, true live online software training programs. It also includes access to cloud test lab with software tools. We provide live project for you to work on. We also provide assistance with mock interviews, resume preparation and review, and job placement assistance. H2K Infosys is trusted by so many students across the world. H2K Infosys provides world-class services in IT training with real-time project work for corporates and individuals, special IT training for MS students in the United States, software design, development, QA manual and automation, performance testing and maintenance, IT staff augmentation, job placement assistance, and tech support.
Hi everyone. Everyone able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think Manoj, you were missing from the last class, right? You didn't attend the class on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. There was no class. Folks, any doubts before we start the class? No. Everyone, please mute your microphone, and you could unmute and ask questions if you have any. If you don't have any doubt in Core Java, Servlet, JSP, okay, this Friday, I'm going to ask some questions probably at the end of the class. So, just be prepared. There's nothing like a teacher or a student sort of a program, but it is just to tell you where you are and to highlight on some kind of a question.
We have some kind of assignment on this one, servlets and all, so that we can practice.
Yes.
Which will contain all this JSPL, JSP, and servlet and database, something like that.
Okay. So in the servlet project I have shared, right, I have given a simple create users and a login user, right?
Okay.
So once the user logs in, right, you can okay, let's take an admin application, right? So there are so many students, and an admin should be able, or let's say, a teacher should be able to search for the students. So for them to sign in, they need to have their own username and password. And once the login is successful, they should be seeing a search screen. Basically, it has some criteria: first name, last name, let's say the join date or classes enrolled. Just take your own criteria. And when the user searches for it, when the user enters some details and says search, we have to navigate to a page wherein we display the student results. And the student name, make it as a link, and when we click on that specific link, we should display the entire details of the student. Folks, is it clear?
Okay, so admin, you said admin first, right?
Yes, you can have same table for as the user, okay? But you can have a role which says admin or student, right? You can have like a same table, or like employee or user table where you have the first name, last name, passwords, and all these details. And you can have a column role which represents whether it's an admin or a student. Does it make sense, folks? Every one of you?
So do we need to connect it to Hibernate?
You can use anything you wish. So you have to
Yeah,
connect and bring back the data. So it's your choice. What are we're going to use? We don't want to write JDBC all the queries and everything, right? That's why we have an ORM framework that has emerged and became very popular in the market. So my choice would be Hibernate.
Okay, so if you consider this project, it's like a small one, okay? So is it feasible to use Hibernate for a small project? I mean, I'm asking in general. In general, I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay. So
see, we used Hibernate as a very standalone without any server also, right? Just a plain class, and we were able to use Hibernate, right?
okay.
Even without a server, we saw some Hibernate examples, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So from the servlet class, you can directly call the class, the Davo class, which was, integrating with the Hibernate. So folks, ask me if you have questions right now. I'm not going to repeat this assignment.
So do we need to normalize the table? Normalize means what do you say, like foreign key and primary key kind of thing?
You can have the constraints, and it's more. It's better to have constraints.
Okay.
It's for data integrity, right? Which is always encouraged.
Okay.
Neha?
Yes.
Yeah, Neha, just can you just repeat what just now joined service? What you told some assignment thing. Yeah, please can you repeat what is the assignment?
It's a login screen wherein the users have two roles, admin and student. When the admin logs in and we authenticate the credentials, you should be able to see a search screen wherein it has like first name, last name, student section or whatever you want to put it as a criteria, and have a search button. So when the user clicks on the search button, we want to display the results in a tabular format. So if the user starts as first name as, Manoj. So we search for the database and we fetch all the users that are present, with the first name as Manoj. So on the name, we have it as a link. The name is specified as a link, and when we click on the link, it should have a pop-up wherein it displays the student details or the more details in a pop-up, or it could be a screen. So the interaction that you make with the database, it could be either JDBC or Hibernate. We have learned both, so you could choose either one of them, and you can use a mix of JSP and servlets, or you could do this with servlets. The servlet project that I have shared with you does the login and the create user. So this is on top of it. Probably like after login, we want to have a search screen. The user should be able to search, provide a search criteria and search the students based on his criteria. and you should be able to see complete details. So in that, you can have many columns or data saying, join, classes enrolled. You can have one-to-many with classes enrolled and many things. So you should be yourself trying to, there is nothing right or wrong, but you should be having a sense on how to have your table schema, interacting with it, getting the data, putting it on the screen. And now we were learning JSTL tags. You could, use JSTL tags if you want to use. So, Pratik, and of course, everyone, are you clear with the assignment?
Yeah.
So, folks, with, for doing a search, search is basically like where conditions, right? If I give person as Manoj, so I want to do a database query saying select tag from user where first name equals Manoj, right? So in Hibernate, this is achieved using the criteria. And I think we have seen examples on criteria. So I'm just, just revisiting one more time. We use the criteria. So for criteria, we can add restrictions. We have restrictions not equal, and all those things. So folks, whoever, I know some people there might already have jobs. So people who are, preparing yourself or heading yourself towards attending interviews, I advise you to go through the interview questions that I have shared with you. For those people who are, just ignore it. But for those who are heading themselves to attend interviews, I advise to start going through the Word document, the interview questions that I have already shared with you. So coming back to the class, so in JSTL, we have seen the core tags as well as the format tags, right? So today we'll be discussing about the SQL tags. So the SQL tags, as the name says, they are for connecting or interacting with the database. So we have a set data source which creates a data source depending on the attributes that we pass to it. Like, what are the expected attributes for the creation of a data source, folks? What are the attributes that we need for creating a data source? There is nothing harm if you say wrong. I think by this time, I think we should be able to. We need the driver class, the URL, username, and password, right? No matter what we are using, JDBC or Hibernate, we need those things, right?
So JSTL, we're using the JSTL library.
Tag library.
Tag library, okay.
It's a set of custom tags that we are using. So
okay,
in that,
how can how can we connect, or is it a kind of replacement for Hibernate or JDBC?
We are using JSP. Instead of going to a different class, we can connect from the JSP itself.
Okay, so we don't need to use Hibernate or anything else.
Yes, we don't need it.
Okay.
But see, it's more difficult to have in this format rather than using Hibernate for a wide application. But it's just like in the earlier stages, probably they were using this. It was more recommended, but I think it probably makes more sense to have a Hibernate transactions and a more sophisticated way, the connection pooling and all those things. But there are some projects which still uses these SQL tags, the JSTL SQL tags. So we have the set data source tag for creating a simple data source. So this takes the attributes, the driver, the URL, username, password, the data source name, the variable using which we could access it again. The variable is the name that's given, and scope is the scope of the variable where you want to have that in a page scope or in the application scope. Different JSP scopes that we could mention for this data source. And we have the SQL query for the execution of any SQL query defined in its body. And in this update, the SQL update, we could execute updates, we could execute deletes. And if you have some queries like a prepared statement, with question mark, the SQL param and date parameters are used to set those values. So once I have a query with question marks in a prepared statement, we set them at a later point of time. So, and the SQL transaction, whatever the statements, the SQL statements that are nested inside the SQL transaction tag, they are executed as a single transaction. It nests the database elements with a shared connection and set up all the database statements or the SQL statements inside this transaction or inside the transaction tag to execute as one single transaction. So how do we actually use this? I'm saying SQL set data source. This is the name which I'm going to use at a later point of time. So I want to do a select from here, right? I'm using this data source. So whenever we're creating a data source, it's like we are giving a variable name to it. So far we have learned, and it's evident that when we want to connect to a database, any database, right? From Java, we need the driver class, the URL, username, and password. So we have seen these things we were mentioning when we were using JDBC, Hibernate, and even when we use the JSTL SQL tag. We need to specify these parameters as, these are the mandatory parameters. And folks, we have already discussed, if I'm going to use a SQL, I have to include this using the taglib directive. And where are we having these TLDs or the tag libraries? They are part of the jar file. So we have included the jar file as we discussed in the previous class. The JSTL jar we have included, and this jar file contains the tag libraries. So if you're using SQL tag, we have to include that specific tag lib. If you're using core tags, we have to include it. And in the previous class, we were seeing the format tag. When we're using the format tag, we have to include that specific tag library. So whatever the tags that we are using in this specific JSP page, we have to include that specific tag library as the starting, at the top of the page. So we have the data source with the name snapshot. So if we're going to use it for execution of any SQL statements, right? So we're using a SQL query. We are specifying the data source as snapshot, which is already created. So we have the data source as with the variable snapshot, and we are specifying the SQL select star from employee, and we are keeping it in a variable result. So the data that is retrieved from this SQL will be present in the result. So as we discussed in the previous class, we have the C colon for each, to iterate through, right? So we get results of rows and we iterate through it. The variable is row and each has an ID, and we are printing the first name. So the C colon for it is used to iterate any collection, anything that that could be iterated through. So we use the C colon for each, which is a core JSTL tag to iterate. So here we created a data source and it's available with a variable snapshot. So we are executing a query against this data source, which is basically the database training. And the data that is retrieved from the query, select star from employee, we are storing it in variable result. So we get the result.rows, and to iterate through the rows, we are using C colon for each. So we're printing the ID and the first name. So folks, any doubts in this? So when we go over here, and when you see it, so we're having two results, Neil and Saroj. That's retrieved from the data list. So if we go and see in it, we have two rows, Neil and Saroj, that's coming from the database. So whatever the data, like we're just accessing the first name, so we could access the rest of the columns if we are interested. And the output, we use the tag C colon out. Yes.
Yeah, like in case you want to use this result in the front end, like HTML.
Yes, we can have like table outside it. I think we have seen in the last the first class of JSP merging the HTML and the other times, right? So you can have a table over here, and for each you can have a PD, PR, and you can specify each C colon out in a TD, right? So I think that's how. Let me just put it out for you. I see. So that you can have a table, and every time you can specify a TD, and inside that you can have TDs like this mixed with the different JSP tags or the Java code in between.
So my question is like, we have to use this like C colon out the whole sentence to retrieve the data from database.
See, C colon out, we are just using it to write it. Whatever the value present in this, it's an expression language. That expression gets evaluated to a value. Sorry, what is the doubt?
My doubt is like, here one connection we are making it, and I have to use this connection and retrieve data in another page.
Could you please be a little bit loud?
Yeah. See, I have to use this connection and retrieve the data in some other page.
Okay.
So in order to get the data, I have to include this page in the other JSP page, right? And then
no, see, you can create a data source and have it in an application scope, which could be used in your entire application, right? Do you remember the JSP scopes that we have discussed? What are different JSP scopes?
Application level and 5, 6, 7 types.
Yeah, we have different scopes, page, application. So depending on how you want to use the specific data source, you have to keep that. You don't need to copy paste this if you are going to use it. And we don't do it in all the JSP pages. So we keep it in the application scope if we're going to use it across the application. You understand that, Pratik?
Yeah, and for the query, anyway, we can use the same thing of this you showed in case you want to retrieve any data from there.
Yes, if you're going to reusing it, across, you can put it in the application scope. The scope is for, the visibility or the usage of the specific stuff. Anything like, a data source or some data. Are you clear, Pratik?
Okay.
Okay. So, and using the SQL update, we are using the same snapshot. As per Pratik's question, so if you're going to use it in a different page, right? I want to fetch some data in a different page. Should I have the same code, SQL set data source in that page also? Not really needed. If at all you want to use it only for 2 pages, maybe it makes sense, like, having in both those pages and specifying the scope only for that page. But if at all we're going to use it for in the entire application, it makes more sense for us to put this specific variable in an application scope rather than having it in all the pages. So these are different parameters, different tags that we have in SQL. So we can specify the scope of the variable to represent the database. The variable that represents the database, we could specify a scope for it, and that controls the visibility, actually. So it's normal. Whatever we did in the example, we're just creating a data source here. And using the scriptlet, we have just created a date variable and a student ID. So if you want to execute an update, the SQL update takes parameters. So if you have some question marks, and we could set it later. And it's more of an prepaid statement, right? So we have the SQL update. We got the data source. We just specified the data source that we have already created. And we're saying variable as count. So if it gives a count of the number of rows that got updated with this specific query. So update students, we have kept it with question mark, and there are 2 tags. SQL date param is to specify the date, and we have the SQL param. We can put any value with it, specifying the student ID. So student ID and this value DOB we have declared in this scriptlet. So it's an example for like SQL update. And we can select the data and have it as a result. So if we want to display it in a tabular format, we have to use a table, and the headers we have specified here, and inside each for each there should be a row, right? So we specify a TR inside each for each every iteration, and each value that we are displaying should be enclosed or in a TD. So when we specify this, we get the data in a tabular fashion with the headers that we have specified here. So we just like, mixing the HTML with JSTL tags right here. We could mix HTML with Java. We could mix like the HTML and JSTL tags that we are doing right here. So we have a table, and we have created a TR to specify the headers, the employee ID, first name, last name, date of birth, and we are using the C:\, for each to iterate through the rows. So the items is result.rows, and we are using a variable row. So the columns, let's say we have ID, full, last, and date of birth. So we are specifying TR and TD accordingly. So folks, any doubts in this? That's how we get in a tabular fashion.
So many of our students have given testimonials on how our training programs are. You will find them on kudzu.com and on our website H2KInfosys.com. On our website H2KInfosys.com, you will also find more detailed information on who we are, the courses that we offer, what each course covers. Also, if you're interested in a demo program, please register on our homepage on the left-hand side. Just give us more information about yourself and we will send you a link for a demo class. The demo class is absolutely free. Experience our commitment by just attending an orientation workshop at no cost. Our team of faculty and advisors are here to guide you with the right information. If you still have more questions, please feel free to call us. Call us at 770-777-1269. This is a United States number. If you're calling from the UK, call us at 020-337-17615. You can also email us at training@h2kinfosys.com or h2kinfosys@gmail.com.